Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. If you're new or simply not yet subscribed, I'm Brittany, and definitely make sure to hit that subscribe button. You know, mythology I love it to my core. I actually wanted to be a mythology teacher, but I know that that's not so cut and dry and stuff, and you need to focus on other things as well as the mythology. It's not just the mythology. And I didn't really care much about that other stuff. I cared about the myths and the legends and the magic. So places like YouTube allows me to talk about those things and share that information that I love so much. And when you like or comment or subscribe or share my videos, it encourages me to continue talking about them. It allows me to share them to other people that might find this stuff interesting and truly have a passion for it, connect with those people. So we are diving into another mythological topic today, and that is the Valkyries. Now, just because something is called mythology doesn't mean that it doesn't exist. There's a chance that it might. It came from somewhere, whether that was an idea that somebody just dreamed up or something that was real. Valkyries translates to choosers of the slain, which is an incredibly fitting name for them. And Old Norse legends talk about two types of Valkyries. There's ones that are completely supernatural, and the other type are humans with supernatural abilities. And they're not born with these supernatural abilities. No, they are bestowed upon them. The ones that are mostly talked about, though, are the human Valkyries. A Valkyrie is often a human woman that had these magnificent powers that were bestowed upon her by the god Odin. Odin is the king of the Norse gods. And if you don't know much about Norse mythology, and you're into superheroes, think of Thor. Thor is actually based off of real Norse mythology, and his father is Odin. There are often said to be 94 Valkyries, but the Valkyries have two jobs. The first one is to watch over the battlefields and decide who's going to die and who's going to live. They will then choose the bravest out of the fallen warriors from the battlefields to take back to Valhalla, where they will join in Odin's army getting ready for Ragnarok, which is essentially the final war. Second task is, once these soldiers are in Valhalla, the Valkyries will continue to look after the chosen warriors, where they will serve them mead and prepare them for the final battle. The mead was said to not only taste good, but also contain magical properties that would make the men stronger, improve their memory, and heal their wounds. A Valkyrie is said to be extremely beautiful. They had this lily white skin, hair that was either gold as sunlight or black as the night. And during times of peace, they would wear this elegant clothing that was made from raven or swan feathers. But when war was coming, they would put on armor that consisted of a gracefully carved helmet, shields, and a chainmail corset. They may choose to wear a feather cap, or in some legends, they will sprout wings that will allow them to fly over the battlefields. Today, Valkyries are looked at as these wise and righteous leaders. However, if you look back on the legends, it's not that cut and dry. The Valkyries may have magical abilities, but they still have humanity, and thus they have human emotions. Valkyries were incredibly intelligent, and they loved valor, but they would often show favoritism. Sometimes this meant protecting humans they loved or even harming ones they didn't. In some cases, their romantic lives would lead to jealousy or fits of rage, even revenge. And some of them just simply enjoyed the bloodshed of the battlefield and would even create fights among humans to watch them fight, just because they were bored. Valkyries were obviously incredibly powerful. But how powerful is the question? Because most of them were human. They were daughters of kings or great warriors that would work closely with Odin. A Valkyrie would influence the fate of warriors in even battles, like the entire battle, but always with Odin's approval. And if they disobeyed that, well, it didn't end well. Some legends say that they worked at these magical looms that had intestines as threads, heads for weights, and swords and arrows for beaters. And this is where they would wove the destiny of each soldier into a tapestry that would determine the outcome of an entire battle. And other stories talk about them riding their horses through the clouds above an active battle. During the battle, they would swoop down and protect the soldier who shouldn't die. They would also come down and collect the body of a fallen warrior and carry it off to Valhalla. And even though Valkyries were said to have this superhuman strength, they weren't actually allowed to fight in the battles. They could only use their magical abilities to influence it. It's said that they might have also had the power of magical foresight and have even been known to deliver prophecies. So now you know what a Valkyrie is. So we're going to talk about a couple of the most famous ones, starting with Brynhildr. Brynhildr was beautiful and smart. She was the daughter of a legendary Norse king, and Odin knew from the moment that she turned of age that he wanted her to be one of his Valkyries. And she was amazing at being a Valkyrie until one day Odin had asked her to make a decision. She had to decide the fate between two kings. Now, she knew that Odin wanted the older king to win, but she decided to have the younger king win. And her reasoning was, well, the older one was going to die soon anyways. Might as well let the young one have more time. And Odin was furious. He did not like her reasoning at all. And he decided to imprison her on top of a mountain, where she would be cursed to sleep in a ring of fire until a man found her and married her. And Brynhildr would sleep for hundreds of years until a hero named Sigurd arrived. And he saw her and he was in awe of Brynhildr. He thought she was beautiful. He was enchanted by the way that the light from the flames danced across her porcelain skin. And when he approached her, she stayed sleeping. So he touched her face and he touched her hair and she still stayed asleep. And then he saw her corset. Now this kind of gets like, I don't know how I feel about this, honestly. But he saw how tight her corset was, so he decided to unlace it. And that can be taken numerous ways. Like maybe he was like, oh my gosh, like she must not be able to breathe. And maybe he had a worse thought in mind. But anyways, he loosened the ties of the corset and Brynhildr let out a large gasp of air and awoke. It was love at first sight, and Sigurd gave her this magical ring and said that he would return shortly so that they could get married after they had spent one night together. But someone else had an entirely different plan in mind and did not want Brynhildr and Sigurd to get married. There was a sorceress that lived at the bottom of the mountain that Brynhildr was trapped on. And she wanted Sigurd to marry her daughter, Gundur. So when he came down from the mountain, she offered him, a place to rest, a sanctuary. He agreed, and while he was there, she slipped him a potion that would make him forget Brynhildr. This would make Sigurd and Gundur, I don't actually know how to pronounce her name, but Gundur, it's Gundr. It would make them get married, or fall in love and get married, but then still, the sorceress didn't want to face the wrath of the Valkyrie. So she decides, hey, I'll send my son, Gunnar, to go and marry Brynhildr. Gunnar agrees and he goes up to the temple, but he couldn't get through the flames because the ring, the magical ring that Sungor gave Brynhildr, blocked him. Gunnar would try to ride through the flames, but the heat filled his armor with sweat and made his horse scream. So then he tried riding Sungor's horse through, and still, the flames wouldn't let him pass. It was only Sungor that could go through the flames. So the stars first looked at Sungor and was like, please, please let me transform you into my son so that he can marry this Valkyrie. And, not remembering that he was originally engaged to Brynhildr and wanting to appease his new mother-in-law, he's like, yeah, sure, I guess I'll do it. And he let her transform him into her son. So Sungor was enchanted to look like Gunnar, and he rode through the flames, and Brynhildr instantly fell for him because it's like, oh my gosh, like, he's riding through the flames, like, he must really love me, he must really want to be with me. Keep in mind, she was trapped alone and sleeping for a very long time, like, not in the right mindset. She thought he was brave. She thought he loved her. So she's like, okay, like, yes, I'll marry you. So Sungor, as Gunnar, takes the ring off of her finger, and they would stay on the mountain that night. They were not intimate, and then they would ride down together. Sungor and Gunnar would go back to their original forms, and Gunnar and Brynhildr would get married. Years later, Brynhildr would start bragging to her sister-in-law, Gundry, and be like, I have the better husband because, he went through fire to be with me. And Gundry was like, oh my gosh, like, I can't take it anymore. So she snapped and she told Brynhildr everything. Obviously, Brynhildr was quite mad and was like, this isn't unacceptable. So she begged Gunnar to kill Sungor. And he's like, no, I'm not doing that. But she did convince Gunnar's younger brother to kill him. She even went on, like, when she was trying to convince Gunnar to kill Sungor, she said that he, like, R-worded her during their one night together, which, would kind of make a little bit of sense considering, like, was drawn to the corset. I could see it. But still, like, Gunnar was like, not happening, not doing it. But his little brother was like, yeah, sure, I'll do it. So he ends up stabbing Sungor to death in the middle of the night. But Brynhildr was still furious. And she's been lied to for years. She married her husband under false pretenses. So the following day, she went on and she murdered Sungor's 3-year-old son. Don't think that was the right route to take, but... So after she did that, she threw herself onto Sungor's funeral pyre, and that way they could enter the afterlife together. And then next we have Svava, and her legend goes like this. One day there was a mute man who was sitting on a hill that looked over the green Nordic landscapes. And as he was watching, he saw 9 Valkyries riding through the sky. Each one was dazzlingly beautiful, with their gleaming armor and their flowing hair. There was one that filled this man's heart with wonder, and that was their leader, Svava. He would call out to her in his mind because his words failed him. And he was surprised when she turned her horse around and rode back to him because she heard him calling out to her. She decided to give him 2 gifts, a voice and a name. The name was Helgi, which meant Holy One. And before she left, she was like, hey, do you want any other gifts? And he said, I want nothing if I can't have you. Baba was touched, like, kind of romantic. So she told Helgi where he could find this magical sword and told him that he would have to glorify himself in battle, and then maybe her father, the king, might allow them to get married. For years, Helgi would fight in the hardest, bloodiest battles. But between the magic of the sword and the protection of Svava, he wasn't actually in any real danger. He did, though, become this legendary hero. When he ended up asking the king for his daughter's hand, he agreed. For a few days, the couple would live blissfully. Like, they were extremely happy. They were in love till tragedy would strike. Helgi would be wounded in battle by a magical woman. And after days of suffering, he would end up dying. Svava was heartbroken and ended up dying not long after. You know, her story is just so heartbreaking. They were finally able to be together and like truly together. And then he dies. And then she essentially dies of a broken heart. Now, Valkyries can be found in the oldest records of Nordic culture, including works such as the Prose Edda and the Poetic Edda, which date back to the 13th century. Even before, drawings of Valkyries with raven capes and horns full of mead can be found on rune stones that date as far back as the 9th century. So were these divine mystical beings only a symbol of a woman's strength, of divine feminism, or was there truly something more to them? Did they really exist? And are they still out there determining the fate of the battle? Let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. If you have any different mythological creatures or beings that you want me to dive into, also leave that down below as well. Make sure you like this video, hit the subscribe button, and until my next one, I love you guys. Bye.